Okay, so my higher self, I call you in to receive this knowing about sacred union, partnership that started coming in this morning. And let us bring it into the forefront of consciousness and from our inner standing. Let us bring it into clear understanding, clear knowing, clear seeing. Yes, so you had the notion from early on, after you began to be open to physical connection, physical or sexual connection, that you had the sense that you were seeking something from it. You were seeking transformation or transportation. You were seeking transcendence. You were seeking to break through. And the partner was, so to speak, like a key to open you. A key to open you. And you were seeking that key to fit the lock. And it was complex because there were several several keys within the key that had to come into alignment in order to open the lock. You sensed this. And this is also why you were so disappointed when it didn't happen, and you projected then that disappointment onto the partner at the time. There are several factors in the soup, so to speak, that play in. And you always had that sense of you wanted to be cracked open. You had the vision of a walnut to be cracked open. And you had the sense that you needed the right partner to crack you open. And there was the desire to merge. But it wasn't the desire even to merge with the partner, even though that was the projection. Because there were most partners you didn't even want to merge with. They were more or less serving as a tool. There was a deep desire to merge with, and this wasn't aware to you, this wasn't conscious to you, to merge with true love, to merge with God, the divine spirit. And truly, where it was coming from was your deep longing for your own soul. But all of this was, the knowing of this that you have now was drowned out by the egoic mind and the physicality, running the physicality. And the egoic mind had the upper hand, and the connection, the awareness of your soul, your true self, was very, very, very thin. It was like a stream that had almost run dry, but not completely. And it was just trickling, trickling, but that egoic mind was loud. And the stream of it, the electric stream of it, was powerful. So it was challenging to get back in touch with your true self. And that was the deepest longing you always had, and that was what was driving your seeking, your desperate seeking almost, you can say. And there's more to it. There's, of course, then also more to it that brings it also, why is it brought into the realm of also of sexuality. So we will explore this now. Yes, we began this morning this the silver thread, the thread that is threading all the dots together. It began with the hearing Jason Estes say yesterday about how he interpreted an injury to the left knee. I also heard this is also my notion for my interpretation, is that knees are about moving forward. They're about movement, walking, and walking forward. And the left side is the female principle of reception. And I shared this in the other video that I made recently. I had a significant accident to my left knee several years ago. And then when he said that, I realized, aha, yes, in reception, moving forward in reception. And then I got this morning, from my higher self, and now we go back to that streaming. That I give it over to you now. Yes. You were seeking to be cracked open, and when you were lying on the street, you were cracked open. That was your crack. That was your crack. And it gave you, also you were sent an angel right after you on the street, and did channel the divine spirit directly to you, that this is what your soul called forth, this happening, this lying broken and bleeding on the rough cement. This is what your soul called in. This was happening for you. So that was the first thing, the first notion that was given to your mind, that was coming through to you, channeled through this beautiful woman. Bless her heart. And there you were then, cracked open and given the opportunity, feeling a more closer connection, feeling your soul more present than that you were aware of before, because as a child your soul was more present, but it wasn't in a conscious way. But once that you lose that connection and it gets drowned out by the egoic mind, by all the conditioning of the mind, and by the closing of the heart, when you then come back to it, you notice the difference, and you are consciously aware of your soul connection, of what is soul and spirit, what is your inner wisdom, what is the life that you are. And what is that mechanism of egoic mind, that mechanism of mind that is that self-talk that comes from the conditioning. It then you have a backdrop, you have, you know the flavor now because you've lost it, because the separation has happened. When it comes back, you can discern the difference between the two. And then you can discern the voice that is coming from that high and dry separate mind, that mind program that we call the egoic mind, that is coming from that identification of self and the actual being of self, which feels alive, which is always now and here, which is not a thought, even though it is expressed in also words. It is also words coming to you, but it is coming from knowing. It's coming from the heart. It is coming from the soul. It is coming from your being. It is alive. And when there can also still come in, because it's new and it's fresh, there can still come in this doubt of, oh, what is this now? Is this the egoic mind disguising? Because it does that. That's the spiritual ego. It disguises as the soul. Or is it really my soul? Yet in that moment when that accident happened, it was very clear, because you were open and raw and you were sitting in that deep stillness. You were back in yourself. That is a deep stillness, and that has no quarrel with anything. That is not adverse or in resistance to anything. That is wide open, and it is the infinite space of stillness. And always here now. And it is the life flowing through you and every other life form. And that is what you were yearning for your whole life. And that seeking, that yearning turned like so, its wheels so fast that it had to crash. It had to come to this this volume of breakdown so you could crack open. Yes. Now we come back to, what does this have to do with sacred union, partnership? It is that the sacred union partnership is shared between two beings physically, in a physical body. It is not coming from the assumed imaginary self. It is not the interfacing of the interface of the faces, of the mask, of the identified self. Although that can still be active and then come in the way and feel like sand in the machinery, if it's not conscious. If it's not conscious, but you see what we speak of here is the egoic mind that is assumed and unconscious, because once it becomes conscious, this identity, then it is not running its current any longer through separation, through the egoic mind. It can still take on the preferences, it takes on the colors and the shapes and the unique patterns of the character, of the personality. But these personality traits are liberated. They are no longer bound to the illusion of separation and therefore running their currents in dissonance to the soul. So that would mean something is never right. That would mean also adversity and conflict and negative emotion. Pulling you down in frequency, pulling you more back into the duality that these aspects of yourself, these are also belief systems, are still lodging in. Because the currents of consciousness are still asleep to themselves, running through the program of the egoic mind. Okay. So, now we come to another aspect. It is often so that through sexual distortion, and especially through sexual abuse, a lot of duality is created through disempowerment. And disempowerment happens when we grow up, when we have grown up in this matrix, in this inverted matrix. It happens, it's part of it. And the greatest disempowerment can happen in the first chakra, which is the rooting into the physicality and into a sense of safety in the physicality. And that is absolutely, completely uprooted and violated through sexual disempowerment, through sexual abuse. And as a coping mechanism, in order to bring back a sense of safety and a sense of power, in the way that one was disempowered, it is oftentimes turned around. And so that which was the violation becomes, as it is turned around, into my disempowerment now is my power. And in order to keep that illusion alive, that sense of power, which is a false sense of power, but it was the only way we knew how to cope in order to feel safe, to keep that alive, it becomes an addiction. So we then become sexualized, we become seeking that, except in the turnaround where we are the ones in power. Not that we become, even though this can happen too, the perpetrators, that where we were the victims and then we turn it around and make others the victims. When in cases this can happen, a very, very intense abuse, be it sexual or in any other way, physical. That's how it works. That's how it can happen. But obviously, this is not the case for everyone. And it can also be turned around, not that you overpower another, but that you are in power. And that you now, that which was the worst, you seek it now. That which you were suffering from, now you seek it and you choose to have it. What was forced upon you, now you choose to have it, and that gives you a sense of power. And it becomes an addiction to hold that sense of power in place, because underneath is the truth of disempowerment that has not been reintegrated into you. Underneath is still the memory. It's still the memory also in the cell memory of where we split off, where what happens when um, traumas like this happen, where in an early age we feel unsafe. It doesn't matter how, but we feel unsafe, and we feel that our physicality, our being has been breached, and our boundaries have been violated, and we do not feel safe, and we feel like faint. We feel faint. We feel absolutely disempowered. We feel powerless. I don't even have control to feel safe within myself. I cannot even protect my own self. That is a deep trauma into the cells. And, it can, as I said, it doesn't have to be sexual. Sexual is just um, the most profound way that this can happen. It cuts the deepest, I will say, because it's the first chakra. And because it is, yeah. Let's not go into that why, and that is a sense. Yes, it doesn't matter, and we don't want to say one is worse than the other. It's all, it comes in all kinds of, this sense of disempowerment comes in all kinds of shades, and then a mechanism begins. This is what we want to share: a mechanism of coping and of self-protection, and that becomes, of course, also a pattern and an addiction, that coping mechanism, and it is a prison until we liberate ourselves from it, until we understand it and we're ready to liberate ourselves from it. And life is the whole time is helping us in that way. It always has our back, because it is our soul orchestrating all of it. It is never an accident what happened to us when we were innocent, all the bad things that happened to us. These are soul contracts. These are choices that the soul has made. And yes, there are many that cannot believe this, and that's perfectly fine. With the remembering of the soul, of your true self, this knowing comes back. This knowing comes back. And that is also the healing of it. So the remembering of the soul is the healing of it. So now you were having this seeking to be cracked open. And it was the coping mechanism, the addiction to to sexuality, but with a partner, with a man, in my case. Seeking the key to open you up to your soul. And this was not conscious. And then also this sense of feeling empowered. You noticed this. You noticed that you it was like a drug because it made you feel empowered. Because it was you who said, I want this, and I want it with this person. And then when you got it, it was like you you were in charge. You didn't, it didn't come to you when you didn't want it, even though that happened as well. Reminding you of that disempowerment. But when you chose to be in that position, to have it, to engage, it was a feeling of empowerment. And yet it never gave you what you were looking for. It never gave you what you were seeking for. And it was like a drug that the more you have it, the more empty you feel. The more you take it, the less it has an effect, the more empty you feel, and you just get strung out. And you never get what you were seeking. You never got what you were seeking for. And the other thing is that what happens with this initial imprint, and it can be many imprints of disempowerment. When we are disempowered, a split happens within us. It's a split, because in that, now we're talking again, growing up, the conditioning. When we get disempowered, regardless how, regardless by whom, and it can even be a feeling of disempowerment, not with another person, it can even be like within nature or so. And then we project it onto God. But it is a deep trauma. That is, in any case, it is a trauma. There is a split from the soul, and that is exactly why also these contracts are made. These happenings, these experiences are chosen on the soul level. Oh God, okay, now I feel it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh. The hero has to leave home in order to come back home a hero. Because before he leaves home, he's not a hero in the journey. In the story, there would be no story. And there would be no conscious remembering, which means there would be no embodying of soul at this level of density. If we had not split off our consciousness from our soul. And that is the illusion. That is where we dive into, where consciousness falls asleep into a dream of itself, of an imaginary self that is not its true self. And that's the split. And then that imaginary self seeks its true self, which is love, but in all the wrong places, because it is not aware of itself. It is not aware that it is seeking itself. So it is seeking this connection in the outside, in others, through experiences. Through drugs, And it is also seeking a numbing of the pain in all ways that one can be distracted and numbed. The pain of being separate from self. Yes. And then as we go, as we step into this field that is filled with pain, that is filled with disincarnate souls that have not found their way back into the light yet, that we share to a certain degree, we interface with, even though we can't see them, but energetically. They have a sense of us. They can have they can see us when we share frequency with them. And so when pain matches pain, they latch on to us. That's when they can see us. And they can then, that's all they know how to do, is they feed off of our pain. Because for them, it's just energy. It's just energy. And they know nothing else than to keep themselves alive. They are not conscious. And then this attachment that we call entity attachment is like a huge amplification of this drive, of this pain, and the drive to numb the pain, even though the numbing of the pain is the addiction and keeps us in the loop and actually makes the pain louder. And so we always need more to distract us more. So it becomes this vicious cycle, but that is also part of how it works, that the vicious cycle becomes, it's like a tornado. It's like a momentum that picks up, picks up, picks up until it gets so large, has such a self-perpetuating power, gets so large, and that somehow there is a crash of one way or another. Either the physicality gives up, or there can be illness, so the physicality does it for us, that it crashes, it cracks open, the illusion is cracked open, because truth always prevails. And it is also this self-perpetuating of the pain body being hungry for more pain, yes? This mechanism is also creating more split from the soul, more split from the soul, more split from the soul, and we lose ourselves, we lose our energy into it. So we also, so much energy is taken on by this, because it's like gathering this shadow. That's also what the shadow is. It's gathering and growing and growing and growing and growing the shadow, and squeezing out the light, so to speak. And then the split off from the soul current becomes so great, the discrepancy becomes so great, that at some point either the soul has to leave the body, and then we have another. That's how the entities have been, got there in the first place. That's how that happens. Is then that the shadow hasn't been reintegrated. We'll talk about that in another video, how that works. How souls are liberated that are in that realm. Or whatever, if we can even call it souls. Oh, I have to drink. Okay, what am I going to do? I'll just go really quick. Always this. I need to have like 3 glasses of water here. Oh. because it turned out to be longer than I thought. Okay. Yes, or what also happens is that when the split off, the disassociation, the being asleep to oneself into, always in the illusion of the separate self, of the imagined self. And by the way, that is also um, goes hand in hand with the closing of the heart. So the current that we're running through, that of our consciousness that is asleep, that we're running through the imagined self. The imagined self, not consciously taking on the imagined self like playing a role play, taking on the person, playing through the facets of the personality. No, 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 no. That's not being awake to yourself. But when you're asleep to yourself, you are in separation from yourself and you're running around seeing yourself as a separate self from all that is. That is, goes hand in hand with the heart not being open. Now, to a certain degree, because you can have a very loving, open heart being completely identified. That is true. However, it is also conditioned. Even though the love, you still have that, you still have the capacity to have a very loving, open heart. But where you are in fear, your heart is not open. You cannot love and be in love when there is fear. That fear is the distortion. Fear is where love is where it's the heart is squeezed and love cannot be felt. In exactly that aspect of you, in that part of your body, in that part of yourself that is in fear. So there is then a compromise to the openness of the heart. So that's what we mean. There is a compromise. And vice versa, or the other way around, where there is love and when you feel love, there is no fear. At the same time, both can be felt at the same time. You can feel love for someone or being, because it can also be an animal, and then you wouldn't say someone. You can feel love, and at the same time you can also feel the fear of losing that being, for example. So it's not like pure, it's not completely open, there is a compromise there. So that's what we mean. So let's thread back, because all of this is going to come together. Yeah. Yes, so back to sacred union. Yes, back to sacred union. This was always the a deep desire. And the desire was there, but the knowing wasn't there yet, what it really meant. The true knowing wasn't there yet because the soul current was small compared to the egoic current, the currents running through the egoic programs. And the addiction was loud and had the power still. Mm-hmm. Yes. So you were caught in the vicious cycle, seeking to be cracked open in order to feel your soul, not knowingly. You didn't know what it was. When it's exactly the other way around. And we will share this. So then a true sacred union happened in your life and it came to you. Yes, a true deep soul connection to a man. It came to you. And what happened was you could not receive it fully. You could not receive it fully. And it brought up all that part of you, all that pain, that love, that deep, genuine love that was on a soul level that was sacred. It brought up all that pain that was not all of your separate self that was not remembered yet. That was not reintegrated yet. All your shadow, all that falsehood, that false identification that you were not aware of, that it was false. So you thought you needed something that he could not give you. You were seeking, in truth, your true self. To be cracked open, and you thought he could not give you that. When in reality, he brought up all of your shadow, and you just wanted to run away. You were not ready yet. Your mind, your consciousness was not mature yet in order to remember the shadow. Remember the truth, and thereby the shadow dissolves. And in that sense, it is true. You could not receive him. You could not receive the sacred union that you had with him. That you potentially, that you were together. You could not live that, and you could not stand not being able to live that. Because you had to become conscious. You had to grow the maturity and the capacity to remember. And this is what we brought to you and into your consciousness this morning, is that the true sacred union, the first sacred, in order for the sacred union to happen between the sacred male-female principle in the physical, in the physicality, first it has to happen within. And within the sacred union is that the soul is the female principle and the body is the male principle. Yes. The soul is the female principle and the body is the male principle. And there, that sacred union is that the body is surrendered to the soul. And the soul leads, the soul guides the body. So all your actions are guided by soul, are coming through soul. All your physical actions and your creations in the world, physical manifestations, that which you create, that what you speak, that how you act is coming, is guided through soul. And that means that you are also, your mind, your awareness, your consciousness, and this now is the sun. This is, yes, this is the sun, this is the fire. So we have the soul. Okay, well, now we're going into a different realm here too. We didn't want to go into these kind of details. We will go into that another time, okay? We know that you love to understand it this way, and we will now this door has opened. We will go there another time, but not now. Now we want to simply bring this, connect these dots and bring it into conclusion. So yes. So the false identification of the mind, where the mind, so to speak, where the consciousness in the mind awareness, although it is coming through the heart, but when we speak of awareness, there it has something to do with mind also. It definitely has to do with mind. And not all mind is egoic mind. Egoic mind is a program that is inserted into the mind. But mind, there is also soul mind. Mind is the ability to, mind is there to function. Mind is there to understand, to perceive consciously. To communicate. Mind is also in the heart and in the gut. There's a mind of the whole body. Every aspect of the whole body, every fractal, every system has a mind of its own, respective to itself. So when this inner union is back in harmony, when that is flowing again, when that is not, when there is no, or where there is no adversity there, of the body and the soul. And we always say body, mind, and soul, but we will get to the Holy Trinity of it and later, at another time. But what we want to say is that all actions are coming from soul and from true self, and no longer from a conditioned false self, false sense of self, separate sense of self. And that is all that story that is based in separation from all that is. And that is also, so it's not coming anymore from fear-based. It's not fear-based anymore. It's completely coming out of your open being. You're open, fully rooted in true self, in openness and trusting life. And all actions are coming from there, a very relaxed place. No longer the need to keep up, to hold up appearances. Yes. Also, no longer the need to protect an image. You know who you are. And it doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't know that. Because someone else can only see you the way they know themselves. They can only know you to the degree that they know themselves. And you, as coming from your knowing as yourself, have compassion and can see when someone cannot see you truly, because they cannot see themselves truly, but you can. And so that allows you the compassion to take them as they are. So this sacred union, when it is occurring on the inside, when you come to a certain degree of it on the inside, there's a certain feeling there that it is love. It is love that is now running your major current. It is now love, unity. And these are words, but we wish to transfer them, transmit them. Out of the unity of that you truly are. The sacred, the union with the divine, that is how life is. That is the truth. When you are living from that place, when that current is stronger than the egoic current, then the sacred union is beginning to take place. Then the sacred union is beginning to become embodied within you. And that field that now is opening, that you are now vibrating in, because it's also a higher vibration. It's a lighter, there's more light, obviously, there's more light. That then opens up to your maturity, to your being ready to receive a sacred union in the physicality with another. And that is what you were always seeking. And the egoic mind will want to say, oh, all that time that I spent seeking this in all the wrong places. And the egoic mind will also be very sad in your case now, in this case now, that I wasn't able to receive the sacred union that came to me many years ago. The sacred union partner that came to me. I wasn't able to receive that love truly in the physicality and live that. I wasn't ready and able to live that. And there is a sorrow there that I wasn't able to do that. And that I stepped out and made it go away. And now here we come to the truth of it. And there's a reason why I share this, because these are general principles. This is not these are just of course, examples from my own experience, but this is general in humanity. So we wish to bring you back to the sense of having lost something and having fallen short and having not being that you weren't ready to receive your sacred union partner. And it is also the sorrow that you still hold about those instances that caused your soul consciousness to split into duality, to split off from naturally being one. And this is, of course, a sense that is splitting off, and the current is splitting off. But see how we do this here? It is always connected truly. Somewhere it is always connected. It never truly splits. It can't. It can only split like this. Because at the core of all life, it is all one. And that can never change. That is how it is. There is only illusion that can come in and give the full sense of separation, and that is the full experience of it. And there is no, when you have that as a mental knowing, oh yeah, all is one, but you do not experience that, it doesn't make it any better. It doesn't relieve your suffering. However, it does help to have that mental understanding as a guiding light, as a guiding light. And we come back to the knowing that regardless of how far a being, a light, fractal of the one light apparently splits off, how far it goes into the dark, how far it goes into pain, and how far, so far that it even goes into the reverse and lives off of pain and longs for pain because it's the only thing it knows. It is its drug to numb its own pain and to keep itself alive. It's the only thing it knows. If it doesn't create pain, it is in panic. It is the pain that it reaches for to stay out of panic. That is the reversal spin. So regardless of how far, it is still one, in truth. And so when that illusion has reached its maximum, it dissolves, and the truth is there. What happened, however, on this journey of separation, so much space was created. So many stories were created, so many realms were created, so many dream fields were created. And all of these dream fields, even though they went into, at some point, hell, they were the hell realms and full of suffering. They created space on the way, and all of this space will be remembered. Even though it won't necessarily all be physically remembered, some of it, the deepest ends of it, will simply dissolve. And it made space for the light to embody, to embody, to embody, to embody into ever greater physicality, ever more complex expressions of itself in all ways not even imaginable. And that is the way of life. So now we come back to why, the purpose, that we could not have done it any other way. We were not mature to receive, and we didn't have the maturity coming in to not split off. And it was also written, it was the contract, it was the orchestration, the mission. Maybe not mission is not a good word here, but the intention of the soul to have the experience of splitting off apparently from itself, and have the experience of duality and of suffering, to create space within itself to then come back to itself. And that means that into this density, all this soul can embody in this density and fill this realm with light. And that is what the ascension is. As the whole realm, the whole planetary existence, the planetary dimension that we are inhabiting on this planet has fallen to a certain degree, deeper than it ever has before in its existence. Yeah. See, when I look like this, I'm really feeling inside. I feel um, the alignment of the words coming through. And so if words should come through from the egoic mind, I would feel it in, I would, that's why I keep checking in. I would feel oh, there's something that's off, and I would communicate that. So we call it ascension. And really what it is, it's not that Earth is leaving the third dimension and rising into the fifth dimension. You could see it that way too, but it really is that it is bringing the fifth dimensional frequencies, and then of course it keeps going, that light into the density, into all the space that was created through the fall into the density of the third dimension. Because we have experienced ourselves as souls in these physicalities, in these bodies, through a very, very specific template, through a very specific paradigm, field, framework, dream, that that was collective on the planet, where we share a very big field with everyone else. There's a field that is shared, that is the collective field. And to experience having come from such darkness, and then bringing in all the truth, all the light, that is showing the illusion of separation, that is making it clear, recognizing the illusion of separation, that creates an expansion of love, of the capacity to love, of the capacity of life experiencing itself into every single little pixel of it, every single cell. It expands the capacity to experience what life is as itself. And that is what it's all about. Because it expands the capacity for unimaginable bliss, ecstasy, joy, beauty. Yes. And that is why, this is how we create these incredible magical realms. And then it's just corny when we use the words. We just cannot do it with the words. This is where really words do fail. Yes. And so, coming back to the sacred union, when the true and the first sacred union, which is your union with yourself, which is the embodiment of the soul, when that takes place, and that is the awakening of the mind, what we call the awakening of the mind. That is when the currents, bit by bit, this is what happens, this is what we're doing here. The currents running through the egoic mind, seeing the world through that template, when they remember themselves, and they can recognize the template, they can recognize the program of the egoic mind, and it's like, oh, okay, I can see now what I was believing myself to be. And accordingly, the emotions were then, because the emotions that's the movement that comes from what we believe ourselves to be in contrast to who we really are. So that is the currents running in the separation current, which is a dissonance to the true self, that is in harmony. That is harmony because it's in alignment with source. It's one with source. It knows itself to be one with source. And that means one with all. So then, when the illusion is realized, it has no more power to hijack you, to keep the mind asleep. No more power to take that soul current, to hold it in a dream that always is running on the basis of separation and fear, and therefore has the capacity of, always is running on a grade of suffering, where suffering is just part of it. When it is then time to express this in the world, and the sacred union partner shows up, then the sacred union can be in the physicality experienced and lived. And this then is another amplification of divine light coming through into the world. It is another amplification of it. Yes. It is like an exponential amplification of it. And we will speak about the threefold flame, the Holy Trinity, when male female principle come into sacred union, come into harmony, in a different video. But in this video, we wanted to speak about how, the split from the sacred through the disempowerment, then the mechanism, the coping mechanism of seeking a false sense of empowerment, because that's the only way we knew how to help ourselves. And then how this pattern, that addictive pattern of having a false sense of empowerment, eventually has to break, because it comes so far, it splits so far off from the truth. It eventually has to undo itself, because we are seeking the truth, not knowing what we are seeking the truth. We are seeking the truth in where we can never find it, in ways that we can never find it. But truth always prevails. And it is, of course, also the soul orchestrating, the soul orchestration of how far it wants to go into separation. Yes. And when it's time to come back home. Mm. Thank you for sharing.